So we're talking about change, and it's interesting because I knew I didn't have enough material to talk 2 months about Islam, so I thought, I'll talk about change. I didn't really have anything specifically I wanted to say about change. I just love change. I was like, I want to talk about change. So in being with it, what is change? There's all types of change. There's the natural changes. They say change is inevitable. That's always, the only thing constant is change. Because since we're little, we're changing. We're growing through all the stages of development. We don't have to do that change. It's happening all the time. Our world is changing around us. Our environment is changing. Seasons change. There's just these natural changes that are always happening. And then there's changes that happen that can feel like it's happening to us. Conditions change that we didn't ask for. We can have an earthquake. You can have fires. We didn't ask for those. I didn't make those changes happen. They're not necessarily part of our routine. We know about growing up. We know about the seasons, but some things can happen. You get fired from your job, or you get hired into a job you never expected, or a new relationship you weren't expecting, or an old relationship ends. Things happen all the time that we don't expect. Change is inevitable. Things happen that we don't expect, and it can throw us. Now, in the mythic worldview, which is sort of this very sense of this is the way where the world was once religiously, was that everything that happened was God's will, so you just had to surrender to it. So if bad things happen, it was supposed to happen, and you were supposed to go along with the suffering, and woe is me, and I'm humble, and I accept all of it. And somewhere along the line, this age of enlightenment came along and said, wait, we have choice. We don't have to, just because things are happening in our life that we don't like, we have a choice in how we respond. We can even participate in changing those circumstances. We don't just have to surrender that this has to be this way. And that was a revolutionary new thought. Because the idea was, we have in the Lord's Prayer, at least in Christianity, that everything that was happening was God's will. The Bible's all about God's will. So if these things were happening, it must be God's will. And what the Age of Enlightenment did was it individuated, saying, no, the divine presence is in, through, and as us. That we are co-creators of the divine. The divine isn't out there telling us what to do. It can only work through us. So to the extent that we say, yes, this is okay, then okay, it's okay. But if we say, no, this isn't okay, then the entire universe conspires to join us in either changing those conditions or helping us change our response. So our response is, oh, woe is me, this is terrible, versus how am I going to turn this into a blessing? What is the good here? That's a choice. It doesn't have to be true. It could be, whoa, this is terrible. It's a choice. Or what is my blessing? We start to realize that we become active participators in our experience. We are not just victims of whatever's happening. So the first part of change is recognizing that it doesn't just happen to us, that we can participate in A, how we respond to it, and B, can we make actual changes? Can we create a new condition and circumstance? And certainly this is where New Thought comes on board. Woohoo, yay, New Thought. New Thought says, we are one with the divine. Therefore, the divine can work through and as us to the extent that we connect with that divine, and we can actually change our circumstances. We start holding new ideas of new possibilities. What we heard in the reading today, spirit has no past precedent. Because something happened yesterday or has happened for hundreds of years in the same way. One of the examples that Ernest Holmes uses in that reading is war, that we have this whole history that war has to happen, that's how we resolve conflicts. And that for thousands and thousands of years, that's how human beings have this habit pattern. This is how things have to be resolved. And what he was saying is going to take a lot, but we have to start changing that habit pattern, that there is another way to get to a place of peace other than war. We want to change collectively that habit pattern. So the idea is that human beings have these collective habit patterns of how we see the world, of how the world has to be. This is how it's always been. This is just the way it is. You have to work really, really hard until you're exhausted, and that's the way you make money. If you want prosperity, you just have to be in a place of total exhaustion. If you want to have freedom, you have to be a billionaire. And we have these thoughts in our ideas of how life should look in order to be a certain way. And what the process of stepping into this teaching is, we're not the only ones who teach it, I want to be very clear. There's a lot of people who are teaching this. the more we step into the awareness that divine is the infinite possibility in every moment, here and now, where there is no past precedent, and we step into the nowness of it, entirely new possibilities that we've never thought of are now made available to us. We align with them, we speak our word, and they start to happen in the external world. So in this world, you hear a lot of the law of attraction. You're all familiar with The Secret. Manifestation is a word that you hear a lot. Demonstration. These are energies of change. And what I find is that it's energizing. When you just sort of have to accept what's happening to you, or just twist and say, I want to look at it in a new way, but creative. I think we're creative beings, and the joy of creating and co-creating, it's not us, our egos creating, it's us unified with this infinite creative intelligence moving through us. There's something incredibly energizing, which is why you hear a lot of the word empower a lot, because there's this energy. I can actually start making a difference in my life. I don't have to accept this. This is the way it's always been. This is the way it was in my family. This is the patterns, the way my family always looked at money, or this is the way my family looked at relationships, or this is the way my family looked at health or work. I don't have to be that way. I can change these patterns. I can participate in changing those patterns. Usually what motivates us at this level of manifestation and demonstration is we want some external change. We want a different relationship, we want a different work life, we want more money, we want better health. There's something motivating us to want a different change, and so we start doing this inner work, these thoughts. We work on changing our thoughts, change your thinking, change your life. And they keep changing it. So now the latest one I've heard is raise your vibration, change your life. It's not quite as catchy, but anyway. The idea is as we change our thoughts, we all know, I know everybody here knows the idea, you visualize something, you picture it, and the more you picture it, you want a new house or a new job, and you start picturing what you want. What are the qualities you want? You start thinking about what this new job would look like, and you picture a car or whatever, a parking place, whatever it is, you start picturing it in your head, and you keep at it, and it shows up. That's manifestation, that's demonstration, and it's exciting. That's another level of change. See, change just is an extraordinary process, which is why I love it, because it can always go deeper and deeper. Because ultimately, when we are focused on a different manifestation, a new job, a new relationship, we like that experience, but it's still the goal is the external. I want a new job, so I get a new job, now I'm happy. I'll talk about that in a minute. We start to go deeper when we realize it's not just an external thing that I want, but also an internal thing that I want. So we start focusing a little bit less on what it actually looks like, the details of, I always love my story of my friend Julian's godmother who wanted a new house. And so she was picturing everything she wanted in this new house, including she wanted water in the back. It was up against water. So she got the house, everything that she pictured in her head to a T. Loved her new house, except the one thing it didn't have was the water, which is why I remember it. Because she got everything else she got. And then there was a huge rainstorm. She's at the bottom of a hill, and all this water came pouring into her backyard, flooded. And she's okay, now I didn't want that kind of water. She didn't, I have to think of every detail. But anyway, but it's playful, it's fun, it's great. But when you get what you want, you're sort of done in some way. When we start working with equality, when we start focusing on first cause, which we call first cause is pure spirit. First cause is that place where there is no past precedent. First cause is not dependent on something that you already know. See, generally when we visualize something, it's based on something we've already seen or already known. This is what it's going to look like. When we start focusing on a quality of pure spirit, we're now moving beyond, we're opening to a possibility of something we've never seen before or experienced before, which becomes an even more expansive way of being in our spiritual life. Expands our spiritual journey even more. I was looking at the words in that reading today, he uses the words expanded territory. I love that we're constantly expanding, and no matter where you are, no matter how long you've been doing this teaching, we're infinite beings, there's always new territory to expand into. So when we pick a quality, I've talked before, and I think for me, this is a really important point. In spirituality throughout history, there's been two main focuses, ascension and descension. Do you remember me talking about this before? So I'm just going to review real fast. Most of you said yes, which is great. I love when you listen. Well, just repeat it real fast. Ascension is wanting enlightenment with God. That means the divine, the transcendent. So your primary focus, the single-eye attention, your primary focus is the spiritual realm, and to be unified with that, to release everything, attachment and identity with anything that is material, gross. It includes that, but the attention is on the spiritual, and to unify with that. That's enlightenment. Those are where the mystics are drawn to know their enlightenment, to know their... In the Western terms, they usually say union with God. In the Eastern terms, it's more to be the infinite I am, that I am, the oneness of all life. Descension spirituality is when, to whatever, we're always descended spirituality. Whatever extent that we are awake, it comes into form. It's descending into form. So what is showing up in our world is spirit descending, creating itself into form. So there's always a connection between ascension and descension, and we primarily have more of a desire, one more than the other. Some of us are more interested in, okay, I've woken up a certain amount, that's good, and I want to bring that into form. Other people, I want to really focus on the waking up. What I love about these qualities of God is that it's both. That it actually is working on us on both energies simultaneously. It is always ascending us to the extent that we're willing to work on it, and it's descending. So I'm going to give an example of how far we can go working with the quality using myself and Joe Goldsmith, because we're a little bit, there's a little shift. And this is all inviting you. How deeply do you want to go? So there was I just entered ministerial school. It was fall of 1997, and they started a whole new program, which they had never done before. So when I entered it, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I had just started working at Agape. The ministerial school had gone bankrupt at Founders Church, so Agape took it on. So it was a mess, and there's only two of us, the dean and myself, working on everything. So the workload at work was huge. I was also volunteering, but that doesn't matter. So anyways, working they wanted to bring a new rigorous academic curriculum. They got university professors from all over the country, the Philosophical Society did, and created this distance learning program, and they wanted us to be really educated, so they had us take 5 classes, 5, normal college curriculum 4, we were taking 5, plus we had to take another class in-house on campus that's about ministerial training. So we were being asked to take 6 classes a term, plus I was working full-time, and we were also expected to do an internship. It was insane. And I was working for the ministerial school, and I knew how much behind we were on that and just how much work we had to do. So I just felt complete overwhelm in a way that I didn't feel like I could fix. I didn't feel like I had options. It wasn't, oh, I want to get a new job. That wasn't it. Oh, I shouldn't be in ministerial school. No, that wasn't it. So there was nothing I felt that I could do to change. Walking away was not an option, we'll put it that way. Or it was just an option I did not want. So I felt stuck. I had to be here. I had to be in ministerial school. I chose to be here. If I wanted to be a minister, I had to be here. And the work, I wanted to stay in the work. I wanted to stay working at Agape. But the circumstances, and they weren't mine to change. It was organizational stuff. So I didn't know what to do, and I was, my first husband, who's also a minister, a wonderful man, he also shared an office with me, and he would just say, he was further along. He'd say, Harriet, practice the principles, practice the principles. Now, I had just graduated from practitioner training. I was in my first year of ministerial school, and I had no idea what he meant. I was embarrassed to admit it. Finally, I said, what do you mean when you say practice the principles? And he said, first cause, there's no past precedent. There's no limitation in first cause. Put your attention there. What do you want? Claim that quality. So I was with that for a while. I said, I want peace. Now, I've never wanted peace before because to me, peace was always I associated with boredom and mundaneness. But now I wanted peace. So I just started asking everybody I knew to pray for me for peace. And by the way, this is the great thing about community. Why do it alone when you get all these people who say they want to pray for you? Say yes, yes. So I asked, Agape had their prayer ministry. I got the Agape prayer ministry. I got the CSL prayer ministry. I got the Unity prayer ministry, the self-realization prayer ministry. I was at everyone praying for me, and I had only one request, peace. I want peace. Anyone I talked to, will you pray for peace for me? I asked everybody, peace, 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 because it seems so impossible. What started to happen was I started shifting inside, that nothing of my external situation shifted. But no matter what was happening, this peace started coming into me, and I learned new things about peace. It wasn't boring or mundane. It was very blissful and joyful and alive. I discovered all sorts of new spiritual elements to peace that I couldn't have gotten just by reading about peace. It was because suddenly all these people were praying for me, and I was holding that possibility, and nothing had to change in my external environment. I was changing internally. That's the ascension. Seek first the kingdom of God, and all things shall be added unto you. When you pick a quality and start working on it, these are qualities of pure spirit. These are first cause qualities. They have no past precedent. They are never limited by condition or circumstance. We start holding to those qualities. They start to become alive and activated within us. And then the next thing I knew, just like a month or two later, they said, oh, we're going to hire someone else for Holmes Institute so you don't have to do all the work. Yes. By summer, the Holmes Institute realized that the curriculum they gave us was just insane. Nobody could everyone was going crazy. So they changed the entire curriculum so you didn't have to take 6 classes a term. And they say, oh, you only have to take 2 distant learning classes. And they just cut it right in half. Everything started changing. I didn't do any of it. I didn't petition them to change it. I wasn't trying to get them to change it. I did one thing: peace. I take that back. I didn't do it. Everybody was doing it with me because I was asking everyone to pray that there was this quality of peace, and as we hold that quality, no past precedent, never limited by condition or circumstance, I just stay, first cause, I want to say that over and over, first cause, not secondary causation. When we try to change things, that's secondary causation. First cause, it can do things that I cannot do of myself, I cannot do it. So I held to that idea of peace, and peace, and peace, and everything started changing. Systems and organizations started changing without me doing a thing. Peace. That is what it means by practicing a principle. That's what it means when we hold this quality, work with these qualities of God. We both ascend. I was waking up to what peace felt like in my body in ways that I never knew, vibrationally and in frequency, and it became externalized. We expand our territory and consciousness, as Ernest Holmes says, and it starts to show up in the world outside of us. We are not in control of how it shows up, but we trust completely. Now, here's the difference between Joel Goldsmith and I. What happened for me was when the external, and this happens a lot too, and it's fine, it's just to recognize, when the external situations shifted and I wasn't so overwhelmed, I stopped treating for peace. Because I don't think it was a quality that really excited me in general, which is why I never did. But a particular and a specific situation demanded that I know that quality. So that's, as we look at qualities in our life, we say, is this a quality because I have a health challenge? I may really focus on health, but that may not feel like the eternal quality why I'm here. So I want to distinguish between those two. On your journey, on change, there's qualities that, there's a certain financial challenges or a work life or a relationship. There may be something in your life. It requires time and effort. You get everyone to pray for you, but it doesn't mean it's your lasting quality. Joel Goldsmith really loved prosperity. He was a healer. That seemed to come very naturally to him, is the healing. I don't think we're all healers. I don't think we're all anything. I think as we open to our oneness and union in God, our gifts show up, and their gifts are unique to each of us. But prosperity was something that interested him. He was a salesman. He was cured by a Christian Science practitioner, so he became a Christian Science practitioner. He was a Christian Science practitioner for 16 years. Christian Science practitioners work with people generally about physical health, but they would do prosperity and relationships. He was successful. One thing we have to note is that nobody's 100% successful. That's one of the, yes, there are times it did not work, but in general, he was very successful as a Christian Science practitioner. And in those days, the way it worked is a client would come to see you, you'd work with them, and you would send them a bill, like a doctor's office, and then you would send them an invoice, and then they would mail the money back to you. So then he felt the limits of Christian Science. It felt too mental to him, so he went off, and he started going into a much more mystical place. And he got into an office space. He just stayed in meditation. He put out a shingle because he knew he was a healer. And he just stayed in meditation, and he knew the people who needed healing would find their way to him. They did sporadically. So he couldn't pay a lot of his bills at first. So he was doing well prosperity-wise, but then he was struggling. And then what he found as he continued in his practice, it would come and go. Like there'd be a big influx of a lot of people who were paying really well, and then they would disappear. He was also struggling because he would send out these bills, and some people wouldn't pay them, so he had to send them follow-up reminders, please, you haven't paid your bill yet. And so the prosperity, he would have heights of, it was coming and going. My point is that it was a roller coaster. If you've done work with any quality, often you'll have an expansion in it, but then it goes back to your default position, and then an expansion, and then a default. But this was something he really wanted to embody. He really wanted to understand and deeply know that he was pure prosperity. So he continued to work on it, and he had a revelation. This is why we don't know how it's going to show up. And his revelation was that he was infinite supply. The divine presence within him was infinite supply. He doesn't need to bill anybody because they're not his source. That's seeing them as separate. The source was within him, and that was always going to provide, and he didn't need to seek it out. He stopped billing all his clients. He stopped asking for any money from anybody, and the money came pouring in, and he never worried about money ever again. He became prosperity. Now, to become the divine prosperity, you have to be more identified with the divine than you do with your human self. Because the human self is always limited. The divine is unlimited. So just working with one quality over and over, not like I said, I worked with peace till a point, and then I stopped. He continued with prosperity until it took him to a mystical place of being, not a temporary state, not a state that he had to mentally reaffirm. I'm a woman. I don't have to keep saying, I'm a woman, I'm a woman. I just know I'm a woman. That's the state of consciousness of embodying a spiritual quality. He knew he was prosperity. He didn't have to affirm it anymore. He didn't have to keep claiming it. He just changed his entire vibrational frequency. He became the infinite, and what he calls it, he doesn't call it prosperity. He shifted it to infinite supply. That I am infinite supply. Everything that I've ever needed and will ever need is provided moment by moment, and I don't have to ever worry or be in fear of it ever again. And the reason why I focus on the time piece is I was sharing this with a woman who was very spiritually awake, had a lot of spiritual experiences, and yet still was new on the healing path of other people. But she really resonated because she had been a place of healing. So she was in her own place. She put out a shingle. She stopped working, and she stayed in her apartment. I'm going to be a healing place. And nobody ever came. Because she hadn't done all the work that he did. One of the things we have to recognize is this journey is long. It's long. Infinite, perhaps. That things don't change. It's not a year. It's not a year of just holding equality. Like when I held peace, that was a year. I didn't become peace. I held it enough to change my circumstances, but I didn't become this high vibration of peace. You know when you've changed because your whole vibration will start. It's a mystical experience. So the invitation to you is to say how deeply, first of all, what qualities call you? I think we're all called by different qualities of spirit. We are called. I remember having a dream of a dancer. He was dancing, and in the dream I was told, he was just dancing, but this voice was guiding me and saying his purpose on the planet is to express beauty. Dancing was his vehicle, but that's not why he was here. He was not here to be a dancer. He was here to express beauty, and dancing was his vehicle at that time. Now he's no longer a dancer. He's gotten too old, and now he's an artistic director, and it keeps showing up. But beauty was the quality that he came here to express. And I don't know if it has to be one or two, how many qualities. I think Martin Luther King here, the quality was love and justice. And everything that he did, love and justice were growing him, ascending him in spirit, and it was outpicturing in his external life. So as we look at change, we are constantly changing. We want to co-create with the change. We want to move with the change. And that change, spirit is always evolving. It was funny, I was at Starbucks this morning and I asked the barista, I said, so how are you doing? What's new? Because I see her. And she said, nothing's ever new. It's always the same. I said, that's so funny because I'm talking about change today. So we say change happens all the time, but when I talk to people, it's like, oh, it's the same thing day in and day out. Wherever you are in your life, well, I have to also say this caveat. Sometimes you have so much change, you just need a rest. That's great. So we have to know the difference between rest and stagnation. We need rest. We need to care for ourselves. We need retreat. That is part of the change process if you don't just allow yourself to be nurtured. But then it can be to stagnation. We're just doing the same thing over and over, and you don't feel like you're growing. We're not a victim. Consciously co-create. Where is the area of growth? Sometimes that pushes external, there's something uncomfortable in your external life that you want to work on, take that quality and run with it, because everything in your life is here to help you grow up, to ascend. Everything, every health issue, job issue, relationship issue, everything is the Spirit saying, here, I'm giving this to you as a gift to ascend, to wake up, everything. So what is being called to you now, right now in your life, to ascend, to wake up more than you've ever woken up before? You might have been doing this work for so long. Are you doing the same thing that you were doing 5 years ago? Have you allowed new ideas and new ways to show up in new areas that you didn't even imagine? You can also focus just on oneness, because that'll take care of all the qualities. And that'll show up in ways you definitely don't expect. That's what the Easterners do. That's what mystics do. They're not really focused on equality generally as much of just knowing their oneness and union with all life. That requires a little bit of death, but you never let go of that which is eternal, ever. And even as we do that, I was thinking, as Jack and Jeff are up here playing, we want to do this collectively. What are those qualities that we as a community want to embody? You know, as one of the things that I believe makes agape so strong, agape is a spiritual community down in Los Angeles. The word agape means unconditional love. They claimed it. They put their stake in the ground, like, that's why we're here. Everybody there who comes has their own individual goals or paths that they're there to manifest, to clarity, harmony, beauty, prosperity, whatever your qualities are. But there was a collective agreement that when we come to this community, we are here to be a place of unconditional love. And so everyone who walks into that community knows that this community is about unconditional love. And I was being that with our community. I'm like, what is that quality? And I'm not totally clear on that one yet. Working on it. We're working on it collectively. Light. Well, I was thinking we're a lighthouse. Enlightenment, which I would say is a passion of mine, is enlightenment. And so how clear are we on that? And how clear are we that that's what we're about? And are there like I think of Martin Luther King, he couldn't have done justice without love, and he couldn't have done love without justice. So there are two qualities that work together. But then even as we as a community get really, really clear that this is, when people walk in here, they feel this because we've embodied it. We say this is what we're about. This is what we are come on a Sunday morning to vibrate and pulsate as. Again, the more we stick with the quality, keep working on it, we become it. Then I thought, one of the other things that I learned when I was at Agape is the individual ministries picked what they were about. So I was listening to music. I'm like, I wonder what quality Jack and Jeff and Jill and Michelle would pick for the music ministry. Like, what's the quality that the music ministry is here to embody and to become and to radiate? So anytime whoever's up there singing or playing musically, that vibrational frequency. What about our youth ministry? What about our board? Like, what are those things that we want to? And it's so energizing and empowering, not to just sort of open to the divine in this sort of vague way, but what are we here to embody and to embrace and to shine? So people feel it before you even spoken a word, before you even open your mouth, people feel it. That's, we were listening to some conversation about Aretha Franklin. And the person said, I can't remember who was saying it, that he said what moved him was that there was as much energy moving through her as sound. He said you could feel the energy more, sometimes even more than the sound. That's what knocked people's socks off. What is the energy that we're vibrating and pulsating, not just individually, you're going to be on that journey yourselves, but also collectively, so that we are so committed to being that it's going to continue to ascend us individually and collectively, and also it's going to start radiating outwards. It's a time of new life. It's a time of change. And we get to embody and play with it. So are you all ready up for this? Collectively and individually, yeah. Because we are a gift. This community is a gift. As we move into prayer, there's another element about this that's just deepened to me this past week with Aretha Franklin's passing. And then I have to call forth these two people as well because they were a big part of my life. So Duke Height was a practitioner at Celebration Center, which was where I did all my pre-practitioner classes. He was one of my first teachers. And then when I went back, then I went back and was the minister there, and he was the rock. He was there every day. He was retired, and I don't know what he did, but he was in that office every day. He did everything. And we had an administrator, so whatever she didn't do, he was doing. And he was Jack's practitioner. He kept teaching. He's been a rock in the Centers for Spiritual Leading. Because it's a DC church, so many people have been to that church. So many people know him. He made his transition this past week. And then unexpectedly, when I was in Cleveland, my former prayer partner and practitioner, she made her transition. And we prayed every week for 3 years, and I don't think we hardly ever missed. We talked for 2.5 we usually talked for 2 hours and then ended with prayer. And what it taught me, because I was also with my mother, is that our spiritual connections with our spiritual family are as deep as our biological family. That the connection I felt with her was as close and as intimate as anyone I know in my family. And but one of the joyful things that I received from that was I felt her presence came to me, which happened before, but it stayed for quite some time. And I felt our soul sisterhood. And then even after that, she stayed it was in a different capacity. And I remember just sort of being with it, because one of the things I hear from these teachers is our human personalities don't stay, and yet we're so distinctly ourselves. And what I noticed as I was connecting with her, I wasn't connecting Harriet with Sheila, the personality we're having this guy. It was her vibrational frequency that was so distinctly her. It could not be anybody else. And that's what we're working on. The vibrational frequency, it is so unique and specific to us. It is our calling card far beyond human form. It is our calling card that goes far beyond when we leave our body. It is who we are. And when we really work on these qualities of God, and I know very clearly of the qualities that she was constantly working on, because we were praying together on it, to feel that and to pulsate with somebody on that level is such a gift. So you are a gift. The more and more you know who you are, the more you know that when people come into your vibrational frequency, what are they feeling? What's that? They start to feel something. What is that? The more you're clear on that, the more you're working on that, the more you embrace that as yourself, whether it's an individual quality that you're working on temporarily or something you're working over a lifetime, you are a blessing. Wherever you go, you are a blessing. And you are blessing everybody. I believe when we walk into a space, unless we are healing and we need support, we are here to be a blessing more than to be blessed, right? Isn't that what St. Francis of Assisi said? To give. When we walk in a place, what am I radiating? What am I blessing? Not what am I getting from somebody else. What do you have to give me? What am I giving? That's what we're here to do, is to give. All right, we'll pray. All right. We are eternal beings of light and love. For this one power and this presence has no beginning and no ending. It is never limited. It is never in fear. It is never in doubt. It is never confused. It is absolutely awake and eternal to itself. This one power and this one presence includes all time and all space. It is before the beginning of time and the end of time. It includes all finite creations, all dimensions of finite creation. It includes everything and is more than all of that. It is beyond whatever word we can use. It is free of words and concepts and prisons of separation and of walls and of boundaries. It is free. It is free right now, and we are living, moving, and having our being as this freedom. Each and every one of us is absolute freedom. We are unlimited by our past, by our families, by our genetics. We are free. We are free in, through, and as spirit. We are made in the image of likeness of pure spirit. That is our truest identity. That is our most real self, is our pure spiritual identity. We are the kingdom of heaven on earth. We are the queendom of heaven on earth. We are that pure spiritual essence radiating and pulsating in a mental, emotional, and physical body. What a gift it is that we get to play in all these dimensions. always playing and delighting in this infinite nature, creating and making itself new moment by moment, expanding our territory of consciousness, expanding and awakening beyond our wildest imagination, expanding beyond anything we could ever describe to anyone, and yet we know that we know that we know that we know. We are that now. Each and every one of us has said yes to our calling. That is why we are on this earth. We have said yes for a divine idea to be moving through and as us, to embody love, peace, harmony, joy, abundance, creativity, harmony, beauty, wisdom, love, and more love. We are here to be all that God is, and God is here to be all that we are. How grateful I am that even as we know this about ourselves, we call this forth in every area of our life that is needing a healing place. If we're needing a greater expression of abundance, a greater expression of peace, a greater expression of love, a greater expression of harmony, a greater expression of health, that those qualities are already here now within us, and we just say yes to it. We cultivate and nurture these qualities of pure spirit within and through and as us. We allow ourselves to be supported by this wonderful community here, and the greater spiritual community is everywhere. Everywhere we turn is support. The entire universe conspires for our good. The entire universe is inspiring for our healing and expression and expansion of pure spirit. There is nothing against us, and everything is for us. This is true here and now. We claim it, we see it, we know it, and we accept it. And as we know and claim and accept this for ourselves as individuals, we claim and accept this for our lighthouse community. We claim and accept this for all beings and all sentient life form on this earth. The entire universe is a yes. We join in that yes. I give thanks for that yes. I celebrate that we celebrate this yes. And together we say, and so it is. Amen.